In the quiet village of Amankwanta, Pastor Is was a towering figure of authority and discipline. Every Sunday, the villagers flocked to his church to listen to his fiery sermons. He preached with vigor against sin, particularly fornication and adultery. To him, these were the gravest of sins, and anyone guilty of them had no place in the house of God. One fateful Sunday, Pastor Isa's voice boomed through the church as he delivered his sermon on morality. Our youth are straying. Fornication is a plague, then anyone who falls victim to it has no place in this holy sanctuary. The congregation murmured in agreement, but the elders of the church exchanged uneasy glances. They admired Pastor Isa's devotion, but his harshness troubled them. Whenever a young girl in the church found herself pregnant out of wedlock, Pastor Is would call her out during service, publicly chastise her, and declare that she was no longer welcome in the congregation. The shame was unbearable for these girls and their families. The elders tried to caution him, reminding him that mistakes were human and forgiveness was divine, but Pastor Is would not budge. If we tolerate sin, we invite God's wrath upon this church, he would retort. For years, Pastor Isa's word was law, and no one dared defy him. But his unyielding stance would soon face the ultimate test. Pastor Isa's only child, Kayameka, was a bright and lively girl of 14. She was the pride of her father, often helping him with church activities and singing in the choir. But beneath her cheerful demeanor, Kayameka harbored a secret. She had fallen in love with Emeka, the church's youth leader and the son of Elder Okeke, one of the church's respected elders. Their youthful love blossomed in secret, but one mistake changed everything. Kayameka discovered she was pregnant. Fear gripped her heart as she thought of her father's wrath. When Pastor Is found out, his fury knew no bounds. "You have brought shame upon me and this church," he thundered. Kayameka's tears flowed freely as she begged for forgiveness, but her father's mind was made up. "I will not allow you to have a child of fornication under my roof. Leave this house and never return." Kayameka was cast out onto the streets, her belongings packed into a small bundle. The villagers watched in silence, torn between sympathy for the young girl and fear of the pastor. Kayameka wandered aimlessly, her heart heavy with shame and despair. It was Namdi, a kind-hearted farmer in the village, who took pity on her. He found her sitting by the roadside, crying, and offered her shelter. "You are still a child," he said gently. "No one deserves to face this alone." Namdi and his wife treated Kayameka as their own daughter, ensuring she had food, shelter, and the opportunity to continue her education. Through their support, Kayameka went back to school. She worked hard, determined to prove her worth despite her father's rejection. Years passed, and Kayameka's resilience paid off. She graduated as a doctor, a feat that brought immense pride to Namdi and his family. Meanwhile, Pastor Isa's life took a turn for the worse. His once thriving church began to dwindle as his harsh ways drove people away. The guilt of disowning his daughter weighed heavily on him, but his pride kept him from seeking her out. One day, Pastor Is fell gravely ill. His condition deteriorated rapidly, and the local clinic referred him to the city hospital. Weak and barely conscious, he was wheeled into the operating room. When he opened his eyes, he was shocked to see the surgeon standing before him. It was Kayameka. The sight of her father stirred a flood of emotions in Kayameka's heart. The memories of her rejection and suffering came rushing back. For a moment, she hesitated. How can I operate on the man who threw me out when I needed him the most, she thought. Tears welled up in her eyes as she turned away from the operating table. The church elders, who had accompanied Pastor Iz, pleaded with Kayameka. He made mistakes, but he is still your father, Elder Okeke said. Show him the mercy he denied you. After a long moment of reflection, Kayameka nodded. She knew that forgiveness was not just for her father but for her own peace of mind. With steady hands and a heart full of compassion, she performed the operation. The surgery was successful, and Pastor Iza's life was saved. When he regained consciousness, he found Kayameka sitting by his bedside. Overwhelmed with emotion, he broke down in tears. Kayameka, my daughter, he said, his voice trembling. I have wronged you in ways words cannot express. I let my pride and self-righteousness blind me. Can you ever forgive me? Kayameka's eyes softened. I forgave you the moment I decided to save your life, she said. But forgiveness doesn't erase the past. Let us both learn from it and be better. Pastor Iza's health improved, and so did his outlook on life. He returned to the church a changed man, preaching messages of love, understanding, and second chances. The villagers noticed the transformation and slowly began to trust him again. As for Kayameka, she continued her work as a doctor, dedicating her life to helping others. Her journey from rejection to redemption became an inspiration to many in the village, a testament to the power of forgiveness and resilience.